Cowes on the Isle of Wight, off the southern coast of Britain, is a renowned international venue for prestige sailing and powerboat events. And this year is no exception, as the Cowes Classic plays host to some of the most experienced, fastest and richest powerboat teams from around the world for the 33rd running of this Cowes International Powerboat Classic event. From the grounds of the Royal Cowes Yacht Club, they look out once again on the oldest and longest running powerboat race in the world. And as such, it's regarded as probably the most prestigious trophy that any powerboat driver can place on his mantelpiece at the end of the season. A warm and sunny welcome then greeted the 34 international teams gathering in the Ancaster Marina for this historic event. This was also the fourth round of the Martini International Endurance Series, and as such, drivers from Austria, Argentina, Italy, Norway and America were here to contend the ongoing championship. This was a showcase for some of the most powerful boats in offshore racing. And at the front end of the fleet was the championship leader and probably firm favourite for this race, Daniele Scioli, with his giant monohull Nueva Argentina, the new Argentina. And he had travelled with his wife halfway across the world to compete in this new European series. And all because he feels it captures what traditional offshore powerboating really should be all about.
I feel that this is really what is in essence the sport, navigation, strategic, mechanic, fitability, teamwork, you know. So I think that I enjoy it really very much. I'm not racing more circuit after last year that when I won the World Championship in Argentina, so now I am full dedicated with this boat to endurance race. I think that those races have a great future.
Go left. No, please go right. Pay attention.
And two great enthusiasts for this type of racing have combined to provide Scioli with a real threat in this race. From Norway, Andreas Ugland, normally seen in the Class 1 World Series circuit. On his right, Fabio Buzzi, the world-renowned boat designer and general powerboat enthusiast. Ugland has been competing on the World Series with his new 40-foot catamaran, built by Buzzi. But Buzzi also built this monohull for Ugland to race for 2 years in the World Series. The monohulls have finally become the dinosaurs of Class 1 racing, although Ugland often had the edge in the rough. So the Norwegian knows this is a very reliable boat, but there have been a few adaptations.
Well, you can see we've made now 4 seats instead of the 2, and the cockpits is gone. And, you know, we have 4 seats, and we'll enjoy the race now with Fabio on board, and we should have a good race.
And do you think you're in with a chance of sort of outright victory here?
No, I don't think so, to be honest with you. I mean, we are running standard engines, and but you know, we'll run quite strong. Yes.
Well, as the crews and mechanics complete their final warm-ups and the bevy of camp followers say their final farewells, at least for the moment, the mood begins to turn a little more serious at the thought of over 100 miles of tough, high-speed, open-sea racing ahead of them. On to the start then, and as the crews mill in Southampton water, they'll be hoping for clear vision and calm winds to ensure a problem-free race. And behind the race, a full safety network swings into action, clearing the many spectator boats and the sailing boats from the course as the race pack prepares to leave. And right on time in fine weather, the full fleet builds up to speed outside the Cowes Marina. Andreas Ugland in the unmistakable red bewinged monohull on the inside, ready to put the throttles full down in an effort to get away from the smaller boats as quickly as possible. And away they go. But the throaty roar of his 3 Seatec diesels are completely drowned out as the monster boat of Sergio Mion thunders through. Its 4 Mercruiser engines already flat out to ensure he gets the maximum lead over the other racers before he hits the open sea. He feels the previous knowledge of drivers such as Ugland and Scioli of these waters may give them an edge in terms of navigation. this is raw power totally unleashed. But as they head down the eastern approaches to Southampton Water, Andreas Ugland and Fabio Buzzi are confident enough to try and match me on. For the moment, they're going to try and sit with him, perhaps to see if this relatively untested boat can keep up this pace for very long. And in their wash somewhere is the boat of series leader Daniele Scioli. But he's going to play a waiting game, having seen these fast starts before in the other rounds, and had the satisfaction of reeling them in when conditions have got tougher or boats have proved more unreliable than his. Andreas Ugland looking very comfortable, and he should be able to match Scioli at least for reliability, having proved his worth in countless Class 1 World Series races in 91 and 92. But as the race headed out along the coast towards Bournemouth and Poole, it was obvious that Ugland's more immediate problem was going to be Sergio Mion in the giant Victory-designed hull. But then it wasn't long before Scioli started to show the sort of power that his C-Tex could deliver, now pushing on to show just why he's capable of winning this race. Not the place for a spectator boat, that's for sure. As the famous Class 1 powerboat racer Marco Capaferri there was beginning to show his hand in his famous B&B Italia Marine boat. Marco Capaferri has been seen on the World Class 1 scene for a number of years, and this year decided to concentrate on the European Class 1 Championships, as well as trying his hand at this new endurance series. Although perhaps not in the best suited boat if conditions were to get rougher. But one ideal boat for this sort of race, an unfortunate example of the sort of machinery we just don't get to see in Class 1 racing these days, is the giant P12 of Sergio Mion. It looks as though he perhaps hasn't battened down all the hatches quite tight enough, but no one's certainly daring at these speeds to stand up to do anything about it at the moment. It already seems as though personal battles are fully engaged between these top four, and certainly Sergio Mion will be wanting to prove to Capaferri that this is real offshore racing, where raw power and endurance will count rather than the cleverly designed hulls. This is certainly racing for the big boys with big toys. So as they turned the halfway mark at Portland Bill, it was Sergio Mion with all that raw power, making the most of the very calm conditions. Scioli doing his best to hang on to his coattails, and in turn, Andreas Ugland trying to catch them if he wanted anything better than third place. Back then with the fleet of the British round of the Martini International Endurance Series here at Cowes. And the team of Austrian Hans Boinch were doing all they could to pull out the best speed from their monohull to try and get in touch with the leading contenders. But it was going to be an uphill battle. They were up against some of the most impressive offshore powerboat machinery seen on British shores for many years. So, as the fleet completed its second lap of the reasonably calm offshore circuit of this Cowes Classic, the next landmark they would be aiming for would be the famous Needles Rocks. And just how close they were prepared to cut their course to these rocks may make all the difference in gaining the vital minutes that could make the difference as the race thundered towards its final conclusion. All was peaceful and calm at the Needles for once. But perhaps not so calm inside the cockpits of the racers who were contending the trophy. And right out front, the man charging home after a 2-hour-long sea battle was Italian Sergio Mion in his 50-foot Victory-built monohull with its 4 Mercruiser engines pumping out a massive 2,800 horsepower in these flat conditions. There had been no way that the more fancied runners had any chance of sticking with the constant top speed that this giant was able to produce. And now he was on his way home to victory. And finally, the finish cannon signaled to Mion that the thundering roar of those mighty engines could now be throttled back. So it was to be yet another Italian victory here in Cowes. This time for Sergio Mion and his co-driver Giuseppe Matti. They had now revitalised their chances in the series, coming within striking distance of the overall championship leader, Scioli. And as the crowds waited, it wasn't long before Scioli, the pre-race favourite, also came thundering home. And they welcomed the cannon, Daniel Scioli and his crew of Luca Nicolini and Dennis Taylor. They'd given their all, but unable to give Mion any real competition after the halfway point in these very flat conditions. And eventually coming in to join in all the victory celebrations was Fabio Buzzi. He'd designed Scioli's boat, but today he was happy to accompany Norwegian shipping millionaire Andreas Ugland into their eventual third place, which would still keep them in contention for overall championship honours at least. But for all the racers who'd travelled from around the world to take part once again in this classic race, winning was not what it was all about, as organiser Tim Powell made very clear to all the competitors who stepped ashore to receive their final accolades. But winners there had to be, and this time in the Endurance Series, Sergio Mion was able to finally claw back some points over Scioli, and the battle between these top 3 would continue into the final 2 rounds. We'll be bringing you highlights of those here exclusively on Watersports World. But meanwhile, the next round, and the many grueling sea miles that they yet had to endure, was the furthest thing from the minds of the winners of all the classes here at the 1993 Cowes Classic.
I think it is fantastic. They've come from all parts of the world, Argentina, Italy, wherever. Robin Kaufman won it, as you heard, when he was a young boy. Thank you all very much. Wonderful day.
They were here from all over the world, but amongst them, probably the most pleased of all was certainly Sergio Millon.
It has been a great race. We have been racing all the time with Daniel Scioli, and the sea conditions were perfect, I think. And if we have not had a problem with our GPS, our navigation satellite system, we could leave Scioli before than we have done. In any case, we are very, very glad, and we hope to repeat next year.
Well, certainly we hope he'll be back next year as well. And we look forward to welcoming him and the rest of the big boat fleet to bring us again this offshore Battle of the Giants.